It's truly a testament to human vanity that we believe our feelings are some universal, timeless constant, when for vast stretches of our existence, entire civilizations likely experienced what we call sadness or anger as little more than a peculiar tightness in the chest or an irritating flush in the face, without ever bothering to assign a label, let alone a philosophical treatise, to the raw physiological data. We moderns are born into a lexicon of hundreds of emotional terms, inherited like linguistic furniture, allowing us to precisely categorize, articulate, and often overanalyze every tremor of our internal lives, a luxurious specificity our distant ancestors simply did not possess.
Imagine attempting therapy sessions for the prelingual. It would be a series of grunts, pointing, and perhaps a violent display of frustration, entirely devoid of the nuanced dialogue we take for granted. This isn't to say early humans lacked internal experiences, but rather that those experiences existed as undifferentiated phenomena, visceral and immediate, unburdened by the weight of categorization. A sudden surge of adrenaline might prompt flight, a rush of protective warmth might lead to nurturing, but these were actions, not named states of being to be dissected and discussed. The idea of a shared abstract concept like grief to signify a complex amalgam of loss, longing, and despair was utterly alien.
Their inner world was likely a continuous, unsegmented flow, the boundaries between internal sensation, external event, and reactive behavior blurred to the point of non-existence. The very act of naming, of drawing a linguistic fence around an amorphous internal state, fundamentally changed the human experience. But why would anyone bother? What colossal evolutionary pressure forced us to stop simply being and start labeling our every internal twitch, transforming instinct into a dictionary entry?
The shift from undifferentiated experience to categorized emotion wasn't born from an innate desire for self-knowledge, but from a brutally practical necessity for social calibration and survival within increasingly complex groups. Picture the early hominid band, navigating a world of constant threat and scarce resources. Individual internal states, while powerful drivers of behavior, remained largely opaque to others without external signals. A sudden snarl, a tense posture, a rapid retreat, these were immediate nonverbal cues indicating danger or displeasure. But as cooperation became more sophisticated, especially in collective hunting or defense, the ambiguity of these signals became a liability. If one member felt a simmering aggression but lacked a word for it, how could the group preemptively de-escalate or strategically channel that energy? If another experienced fear but couldn't articulate it beyond trembling, how could the group collectively assess the threat without risking panic or misjudgment? The earliest emotional labels were likely crude functional terms, a proto-word for danger state or group discord. These weren't about introspection, but about shared operational understanding. They served as primitive early warning systems, allowing individuals to rapidly communicate their internal disposition and its potential implications for the collective. This was about establishing a common framework for predicting and influencing behavior, crucial for coordinating complex tasks that required multiple individuals acting in concert, beyond mere instinctive reactions. The ability to express something like, "I am feeling X," which means Y for our collective action, was a revolutionary leap in social efficiency, far more effective than simply reacting to a sudden lunge or a wail. This wasn't poetry, it was social engineering.
The true cognitive leap, however, came with the co-evolution of complex language and the capacity for abstract thought, allowing internal states to be conceptualized as distinct entities, separable from the immediate physical sensation. Naming an emotion is not just labeling an experience, it's an act of reification, transforming a transient sensation into a stable, communicable concept. This required a brain capable of symbolic representation, where a sound or gesture could stand in for something invisible and internal.
Early hominins, through the slow grind of natural selection, developed increasingly sophisticated neural architectures that supported recursive thought and a theory of mind, the understanding that others possess internal states distinct from one's own. With this came the capacity for introspection, even if rudimentary. As language developed, it provided the very scaffolding for this dissection of the inner world. A simple grunt for danger evolved into distinct words for fear, anxiety, terror, each denoting a specific flavor and intensity of the core experience. This was not a sudden epiphany, but a gradual linguistic accretion. Think of it like a scientist developing a taxonomy for newly discovered species.
The initial broad categories eventually give way to incredibly detailed subspecies as understanding deepens. The development of metaphors and narrative structures in early myths and rituals also played a crucial role, allowing communities to collectively explore and give form to complex emotional landscapes before precise lexicon existed. These narratives provided a shared interpretive framework, essentially a training ground for emotional literacy, priming the mind to eventually accept and apply abstract labels to subjective experience. This was the moment humans stopped merely reacting to their feelings and started actively dissecting them. The agricultural revolution proved to be the grand accelerant for this linguistic partitioning of the inner world, pushing emotional categorization from a useful tool to an absolute necessity. Nomadic hunter-gatherer bands, while complex, were generally smaller, their social dynamics governed by direct, face-to-face interaction and immediate context. The shift to settled farming, however, brought unprecedented population density, permanent structures, the concept of private property, and highly stratified social hierarchies. With these advancements came an explosion of novel social and economic interactions that demanded far more nuanced emotional communication and understanding. The simple danger state was no longer sufficient.
Now, managing land disputes required articulating resentment or aggression before a spear was thrown. The complexities of trade and resource allocation necessitated understanding trust and deception. The emergence of leadership and governance depended on identifying loyalty and treason. As societies grew, so did the potential for abstract, non-physical forms of conflict and cooperation. How do you enforce a shared social contract without a vocabulary for guilt, shame, or honor? The economic underpinnings of these new societies were interwoven with emotional currency. A farmer's envy could sabotage a harvest. A leader's arrogance could destabilize an empire. The very fabric of these burgeoning civilizations relied on a shared, increasingly granular lexicon to navigate, mitigate, and even manipulate the intricate web of human feeling, turning raw emotion into a manageable, predictable, and ultimately governable social force. The naming of feelings became a fundamental technology for collective organization. In the final, exquisite irony, the ability to name our feelings, a tool forged in the crucible of survival and social engineering, ultimately transformed into a double-edged sword, birthing introspection, identity, and an entirely new spectrum of psychological suffering. What began as a means to better coordinate a mammoth hunt evolved into the intricate nomenclature of psychoanalysis, where the minutiae of one's internal landscape becomes a lifelong project of decipherment. The ancient human, experiencing a sudden surge of something we now call anxiety, might have simply acted, fighting, fleeing, or freezing, without further analysis. The modern human, equipped with a precise label, can now ruminate on that anxiety, trace its origins, anticipate its return, and construct entire personal narratives around it. This linguistic precision, while empowering deeper self-understanding and enabling sophisticated art and philosophy, simultaneously created new vulnerabilities. Naming a feeling gives it power, an independent existence within our minds. Melancholy ceases to be just a fleeting mood and becomes a recognized entity capable of taking root and defining aspects of self. We didn't just understand our feelings better, we fundamentally altered their nature by giving them form and conceptual permanence. In defining our emotional boundaries, we built prisons for our own minds, creating an internal theater of named states that could now be debated, suppressed, amplified, or even fetishized. Perhaps the truly evolved being would simply feel without the burdensome baggage of 1,000 linguistic labels, living in a moment of pure, unanalyzed sensation, free from the endless self-interrogation that ironically began as a practical tool for primitive social cohesion.